One aspect of this need for emotional self-protection lies in how individuals handle vulnerability. When someone loves deeply, they expose parts of themselves that are often guarded. This exposure can bring forth fears, insecurities, and past wounds. Ignoring or creating distance is a coping mechanism, a way to shield themselves from the perceived risks that come with being vulnerable. They might fear that showing their true self will lead to rejection or judgment, so they retreat to a place where they feel safer. This withdrawal is not a reflection of their feelings toward you, but an attempt to navigate the emotional landscape in a way that feels manageable to them. People often carry emotional baggage from previous experiences. If someone has been hurt or betrayed in the past, those experiences leave emotional scars that influence how they engage in future relationships. They might have learned to associate deep connection with potential pain. When they find themselves in a relationship where they care deeply, those old fears resurface. The distance they create is an unconscious defense mechanism, a way to prevent history from repeating itself. Even though they love you, they are trying to protect themselves from the possibility of future hurt. They believe that by stepping back, they can avoid becoming too dependent or vulnerable, which in their minds reduces the risk of emotional pain. Another dimension of this behavior is related to emotional exhaustion. Loving someone deeply can be emotionally demanding. It requires energy, attention, and constant emotional engagement. For some, especially those who are naturally introspective or sensitive, this intensity can become overwhelming. They might pull back because they need time to recharge and regain their emotional equilibrium. This is not a rejection of the relationship or a sign that their love is fading. Rather, it's an act of self-preservation. They understand that to be fully present and engaged in the relationship, they need to take care of their own emotional well-being. Ignoring you or creating distance is their way of ensuring they don't reach a point of emotional burnout. This behavior can also be tied to a fear of losing control. Love brings with it a sense of surrender. When someone loves deeply, they are no longer entirely in control of their own emotional state. Their happiness becomes intertwined with yours. This loss of control can be unsettling, especially for individuals who value their independence or have a strong need for autonomy. By creating distance, they are trying to regain a sense of control over their emotions. They want to ensure that they are not losing themselves in the relationship, that they remain grounded and independent. This withdrawal is not about pushing you away, it's about maintaining a sense of self within the context of a deep connection. For some, this behavior is also a way of managing expectations. When someone loves you deeply, they want to be the best partner they can be. This desire to meet your needs and make you happy can create a sense of pressure. They might worry that they will fall short or disappoint you. This fear of not living up to expectations can lead them to pull back. By creating distance, they are trying to alleviate some of that pressure. They are not ignoring you because they don't care they are doing so, because they are afraid of failing you. They need space to process their own insecurities and to remind themselves that they are enough. Creating distance can also be a way for someone to process their emotions. Love brings up a wide range of feelings, some of which can be confusing or overwhelming. They might need time and space to make sense of what they are feeling, to sort through their emotions without the added pressure of constant interaction. This period of introspection is not a sign that they are withdrawing from the relationship. Rather, it's a way of ensuring that they are emotionally clear and stable. They want to be sure of their feelings, and they want to engage with you from a place of authenticity and emotional clarity. Understanding this behavior requires empathy and patience. When someone who loves you deeply seems to ignore you, it's important to recognize that their actions are often driven by their own internal struggles. They are not rejecting you or the relationship. They are navigating their own emotional landscape in the best way they know how. They are trying to protect themselves from the intensity of their feelings, from the fear of vulnerability, and from the emotional demands of deep connection. The best way to support them is to create a safe space where they feel understood and accepted. Let them know that they don't have to face their fears alone, that you are there for them, and that love doesn't have to be a source of stress or fear. True connection is built on empathy, patience, and a willingness to navigate the complexities of human emotion together. When someone who loves you deeply seems to ignore you, it can often be a result of their desire to give you space, believing it to be a necessary element in strengthening the relationship. This behavior is not rooted in a lack of care, but rather in a conscious or subconscious effort to provide room for growth, self-reflection, and balance within the relationship. Understanding this dynamic requires looking beyond the surface and recognizing the intentions behind their actions, which are often motivated by a desire to foster a healthier connection. Love, when intense and consuming, can sometimes blur the lines between individuality and partnership. In many relationships, especially those where emotions run deep, there's a risk of becoming overly dependent on one another. This dependence can stifle personal growth and lead to a situation where the identities of the individuals involved become lost in the relationship. Someone who loves you deeply may recognize this risk and choose to create space as a way of preserving both their own identity and yours. They understand that a healthy relationship requires two whole, independent individuals who come together to share their lives, rather than merging into one entity. By stepping back, they are allowing both of you the opportunity to maintain your individuality, which in turn strengthens the foundation of your connection. Creating space is also a way of fostering self-reflection and personal growth. When you are constantly immersed in a relationship, it can be easy to lose sight of your own needs, goals, and aspirations. Someone who loves you might pull back to give you the chance to reconnect with yourself. They believe that by allowing you this space, you can better understand your own desires and priorities, which ultimately benefits the relationship. This distance is not about pushing you away, it's about giving you the freedom to grow. They understand that a strong relationship is built on the foundation of two individuals who are secure in themselves and clear about what they want from life and love. Another important aspect of this behavior is the recognition that love can sometimes be overwhelming. When someone cares deeply, their emotions can become intense, and they may worry that their constant presence could be stifling or overbearing. By creating space, they are trying to ensure that the relationship remains balanced and that you don't feel smothered. This is particularly true for individuals who are naturally introspective or independent. They value their own space and understand the importance of giving that same freedom to their partner. Their withdrawal is not a sign of disinterest, it's an act of respect. They are giving you the room to breathe, to miss them, and to appreciate the relationship from a distance. Space in a relationship also allows for perspective. When you are constantly together, it's easy to take each other for granted or to lose sight of what makes the relationship special. Someone who loves you deeply might step back to give both of you the chance to gain a fresh perspective. This distance allows you to reflect on the relationship, to appreciate what you have, and to recognize the value of your connection. It's a way of preventing complacency and ensuring that the relationship remains vibrant and meaningful. They believe that absence can indeed make the heart grow fonder, and by creating space, they are nurturing a deeper appreciation for each other. There's also an element of trust involved in creating space. When someone steps back, they are demonstrating their trust in the strength of the relationship. They believe that the connection you share is strong enough to withstand periods of distance. This trust is a sign of deep love and respect. They are not pulling away because they doubt the relationship, they are doing so because they have faith in it. They trust that you will both use this time to reflect, to grow, and to come back together stronger than before. This behavior is a testament to the depth of their commitment. They are willing to endure the discomfort of distance because they believe it will ultimately strengthen your bond. In some cases, creating space is also a way of managing their own emotions. Loving someone deeply can bring up a lot of intense feelings, and sometimes those feelings need to be processed in solitude. They might step back to give themselves time to sort through their emotions, to ensure that they are engaging with you from a place of clarity and authenticity. This time apart allows them to recharge and to come back to the relationship with a renewed sense of purpose and emotional stability. They are not ignoring you because they don't care, they are doing so because they care too much to risk bringing any unresolved emotions into the relationship. Finally, creating space can be a way of setting healthy boundaries. In any relationship, it's important to have a balance between closeness and independence. Someone who loves you deeply might recognize the importance of maintaining these boundaries and choose to step back as a way of reinforcing them. This is not about creating distance for the sake of it, it's about ensuring that both partners have the freedom to be themselves. They understand that a strong relationship is one where both individuals feel free to grow, to pursue their own interests, and to maintain their own sense of identity. By creating space, they are fostering a relationship that is built on mutual respect, trust, and independence. Understanding this dynamic requires empathy and open communication. When someone who loves you deeply seems to ignore you, it's important to recognize that their actions are often driven by a desire to create a healthier, more balanced connection. They are not pulling away because they don't care, they are doing so because they care enough to want the best for both of you. They believe that by giving you space, they are nurturing a relationship that is built on a foundation of trust, respect, and personal growth. True love is not about constant proximity, it's about creating a connection that allows both individuals to thrive. Sometimes love doesn't look the way we expect. We imagine grand gestures, endless attention, and constant reassurance. But in reality, love is complex. The person who loves you deeply might sometimes seem distant, unavailable, or even indifferent. This contradiction is confusing, but beneath it lies a profound truth. Deep love brings with it a unique kind of vulnerability, an exposure that many find difficult to face. When someone truly cares for you, the stakes are high. They are not just investing their time and emotions, they are laying bare their innermost self, with all its imperfections, fears, and dreams. This kind of openness is not easy. It requires a level of trust and courage that many struggle to muster. When someone ignores you despite loving you deeply, it is often because they fear the very vulnerability that love demands. They are afraid of the rawness that comes with being fully seen, fully known, and fully open to potential pain. In every deep relationship, there comes a point where the walls have to come down. The masks we wear in our daily lives fall away, and we stand before the other person with all our insecurities on display. For some, this is terrifying. The fear of being judged, misunderstood, or rejected looms large. They worry that if you see them for who they truly are, you might not love them back in the same way. So rather than risking that exposure, they retreat. Ignoring you becomes a shield, a way to protect themselves from the possibility of hurt. It's not that they don't care, it's that they care so much that the fear of loss or rejection becomes overwhelming. This fear of vulnerability often stems from past experiences. Maybe they have been hurt before, perhaps in ways that left deep emotional scars. Those wounds might still be fresh, and the thought of reopening them is too painful to bear. When they sense that their feelings for you are growing deeper, their instinct is to pull back. They might not even be fully aware of why they are doing it. It's a subconscious defense mechanism. Their mind tells them that if they create distance, they can avoid the risk of getting hurt again. It's a way of staying safe, even if it means sacrificing closeness in the process. There is also a fear of losing control. Love is unpredictable. It doesn't follow a set pattern, and it doesn't always make logical sense. When someone loves deeply, they can feel like they are losing their grip on their own emotions. This can be unsettling, especially for someone who is used to being in control of their life. Ignoring you becomes a way to regain a sense of balance. They think that by stepping back, they can protect themselves from the chaos that deep emotions can bring. It's not that they want to hurt you, they are simply trying to manage their own fears and insecurities. For some, vulnerability is linked to a sense of unworthiness. They might love you deeply but struggle with the belief that they are not good enough for you. They fear that if they let you get too close, you will see their flaws and decide to leave. Ignoring you is their way of hiding those perceived imperfections. They think that by keeping a distance, they can prevent you from discovering the parts of themselves that they believe are unlovable. It's a heartbreaking irony, the very thing they are trying to protect, your love and acceptance, becomes strained by their actions. There is also the fear of dependency. Loving someone deeply means relying on them, and that reliance can be frightening. It means opening yourself up to the possibility of being let down. For someone who has been hurt in the past, the idea of depending on another person again can be paralyzing. Ignoring you is a way of maintaining their independence. They want to love you, but they don't want to need you. They fear that if they allow themselves to rely on you, they will be setting themselves up for future pain. So they create distance even when it's the last thing they truly want. At its core, the fear of vulnerability is a fear of loss. Loving someone means risking the possibility of losing them. It means opening your heart to the potential for heartbreak. For someone who loves you deeply, the thought of losing you might be too much to bear. Ignoring you is their way of trying to protect themselves from that pain. They think that if they keep you at arm's length, they won't be as devastated if things don't work out. It's a way of trying to control the uncontrollable, to create a safety net where there is none. Yet, in doing so, they might not realize the damage they are causing. Love thrives on connection, on openness, on shared vulnerability. By creating distance, they risk pushing you away, the very thing they fear the most. It's a tragic paradox. In trying to protect themselves from loss, they might inadvertently create it. The key to overcoming this fear lies in understanding that vulnerability is not a weakness. It is the very foundation of love. True connection requires risk. It means opening up, even when it's scary. It means trusting that the other person will see your flaws and love you anyway. When someone who loves you deeply seems to ignore you, it's important to look beyond their actions. Understand that their distance is not a reflection of their feelings for you, it's a reflection of their own fears and insecurities. They are not pushing you away because they don't care, they are doing it because they care too much. Their silence is not indifference, it's a plea for understanding. By recognizing this, you can create a space where they feel safe to be vulnerable, where they can let down their guard and truly open up. Love is not about perfection, it's about embracing the messiness, the fears, and the flaws. It's about standing together, even when it's hard. Sometimes the person who loves you deeply seems distant because they are fighting personal battles you cannot see. Love does not always present itself in clear and simple forms, it often exists alongside struggle, complexity, and pain. When someone who cares about you withdraws, it's easy to take it personally, to assume that their distance means a lack of affection or interest. In reality, that distance often has little to do with you and everything to do with what they are going through internally. They may be wrestling with their own demons, stress, trauma, insecurities, or unresolved issues, and their withdrawal is a way of protecting both you and themselves from the turbulence within. Personal struggles are often invisible from the outside. We see people through the lens of our own expectations, and when they love us, we expect consistency, attention, and openness. But love doesn't erase personal pain. Even the deepest affection can be overshadowed by internal conflicts. Someone might be dealing with pressures at work, financial concerns, or health issues. They might be carrying the weight of past traumas or unresolved family dynamics. These burdens are heavy, and sometimes the only way they know how to cope is to retreat. It's not about shutting you out, it's about trying to manage their own emotions and responsibilities without dragging you into their storm. When someone loves you, they don't want to burden you with their struggles. They care about your well-being and may feel that sharing their pain would place an unfair weight on your shoulders. In their mind, withdrawing is an act of protection. They think that by creating distance, they can shield you from their chaos. They don't want their issues to become your issues, so they pull back, hoping to resolve things on their own. This approach might seem counterintuitive, especially when all you want is to be there for them. But from their perspective, they are trying to keep you safe from the darker parts of their world. This withdrawal can also stem from a fear of vulnerability. Personal struggles often bring feelings of shame or inadequacy. They might fear that if you see them at their lowest, you will think less of them. They worry about being judged or rejected for their weaknesses. So they hide. They retreat into silence, thinking it's better to face their battles alone than to risk exposing their imperfections. This fear of being seen in their most vulnerable state can be overwhelming. It's not that they don't trust you. It's that they don't trust themselves to be strong enough in front of you. They want to present a version of themselves that is whole, capable, and deserving of your love. When they feel they can't live up to that image, they step back. Sometimes the struggles they face are so consuming that they have nothing left to give. Love requires energy, emotional, mental, and sometimes even physical. When someone is battling their own demons, they might feel drained, unable to offer you the attention and care you deserve. It's not a reflection of their feelings for you, it's a sign of their own exhaustion. They might feel like they are barely holding themselves together, and the idea of giving more, even to someone they love deeply, feels impossible. In these moments, their withdrawal is a form of self-preservation. They are trying to conserve what little energy they have, hoping that by doing so they can eventually return to you whole. There is also the fear of being misunderstood. Personal struggles are often complex and messy. They might feel that no matter how much they explain, you won't fully understand what they are going through. This fear can lead to isolation. Rather than risking miscommunication or feeling invalidated, they choose silence. They believe that by keeping their struggles to themselves, they can avoid the potential pain of being misunderstood. This isolation is not a reflection of their trust in you, it's a reflection of their own doubts and insecurities. They worry that their pain is too complicated, too heavy, or too difficult for anyone else to understand. In some cases, their personal struggles might be tied to their feelings for you. Loving someone deeply can bring up fears and insecurities that were buried before. They might be questioning their worthiness, doubting their ability to be a good partner, or fearing the possibility of losing you. These fears can be paralyzing. They might pull back because they are afraid of messing things up. They love you so much that the thought of failing you becomes overwhelming. Their withdrawal is not a sign of indifference, it's a sign of how much they care. They are trying to protect the relationship by stepping back, even though it might seem like they are creating distance. It's important to remember that everyone copes with struggles differently. Some people lean on others for support, while others retreat into themselves. When someone who loves you seems distant, it's easy to assume the worst. But often their withdrawal is not about you, it's about them. They are fighting battles you can't see, and their distance is a reflection of their own pain, not their feelings for you. The best thing you can do is offer patience and understanding. Create a safe space where they feel comfortable opening up when they are ready. Let them know that you are there, not to fix their problems, but to walk beside them through the storm. Love is not always about being close sometimes. It's about giving someone the room they need to heal. In any relationship, love brings with it a depth of emotion and connection that can be both beautiful and overwhelming. When someone who loves you deeply creates distance or seems to ignore you, it's often not a reflection of their feelings toward you, but rather a reflection of their need to maintain balance and space within themselves. Love, especially when it's intense and consuming, can become all-encompassing, leaving little room for personal boundaries and individual growth. For some people, stepping back and creating distance is a way to restore that balance, to ensure that the relationship remains healthy and sustainable rather than becoming suffocating or overwhelming. One of the key reasons someone might pull away is their need for personal space. Everyone has different thresholds for closeness and intimacy. For some, being in a relationship doesn't mean losing their sense of self or independence. They need time alone to recharge, reflect, and maintain their individuality. This isn't a rejection of the relationship or a sign of diminished love. Rather, it's an essential part of maintaining their well-being. They understand that to be fully present in the relationship, they need to take care of themselves first. Ignoring you or creating distance might be their way of finding that space, of ensuring that they don't lose themselves in the process of loving you. Love can also bring with it a sense of responsibility that some people find overwhelming. When you care deeply about someone, their happiness and well-being become a priority. This can create pressure to always be available, to always provide support, to never let the other person down. Over time, this pressure can become exhausting, especially if they feel like they are constantly giving without taking time to replenish their own emotional reserves. By stepping back and creating distance, they are trying to avoid burnout. They are not ignoring you out of indifference. They are doing so because they recognize their own limits and are trying to avoid reaching a point where they can no longer give anything at all. In many cases, this need for space is about preserving the health of the relationship. Love can be intense, and intensity is not always sustainable in the long term. When someone feels overwhelmed by their emotions, they might fear that the relationship will become unstable or unhealthy if they don't create some distance. They pull back not because they don't care, but because they do. They want to ensure that their love for you remains strong, and that the relationship doesn't burn out under the weight of constant closeness. They understand that a healthy relationship requires balance between connection and independence, between intimacy and personal space. Another reason for this withdrawal is the need to maintain a sense of identity. When two people are deeply in love, it's easy to become enmeshed, to lose sight of where one person ends and the other begins. This can be particularly challenging for individuals who have a strong sense of self or who have worked hard to build their independence. They might fear that if they don't create boundaries, they will lose their identity within the relationship. Ignoring you or pulling back is their way of asserting that independence, of reminding themselves and you that they are still their own person. They are not rejecting you, they are reaffirming their own identity. This need for space is also about emotional self-preservation. Love can be intense and all-consuming, and not everyone is equipped to handle that level of emotional vulnerability all the time. Some people need to take a step back to process their feelings, to make sense of the intensity of their emotions. This is especially true if they have been hurt in the past or if they have a history of difficult relationships. They might be afraid of getting too close, of becoming too dependent on you, because they fear that it will leave them vulnerable to pain or disappointment. By creating distance, they are trying to protect themselves not from you, but from their own fears and insecurities. It's also worth noting that for some people, creating distance is a way of testing the relationship. They want to see if the connection is strong enough to withstand periods of separation. This might seem counterintuitive, but for them, it's a way of ensuring that the relationship is built on a solid foundation. They are not pulling away because they don't love you. They are doing so because they want to make sure that the love you share is real and lasting. They want to know that the relationship can survive the ups and downs, that it doesn't depend on constant closeness to thrive. Ultimately, when someone who loves you deeply creates distance, it's important to understand that their actions are not necessarily a reflection of their feelings for you. They are not ignoring you because they don't care. They are doing so because they need to take care of themselves. They are trying to maintain a balance between their love for you and their own well-being. They understand that to be a good partner, they need to be whole and healthy themselves. By creating space, they are not pulling away from the relationship, they are investing in its long-term health. They are ensuring that the love you share remains strong, sustainable, and true. The dynamic between love and attention often reveals complexities that go beyond the surface. When someone who loves you deeply seems to ignore you, it can be confusing and even hurtful. However, their behavior often stems from a deep-rooted fear of losing you. This paradox may seem counterintuitive, but it reflects a fundamental truth about human emotions sometimes. The more we fear losing something precious, the more we withdraw in an attempt to protect ourselves and the relationship. Fear of loss can create a powerful psychological barrier. When we care about someone intensely, the thought of losing them can be overwhelming. This fear can manifest in different ways, and one common response is to create distance. It's a defense mechanism, an attempt to preemptively shield oneself from potential pain. If someone feels vulnerable in a relationship, they might think that by pulling back, they can regain a sense of control. This withdrawal is not a sign that they care less. On the contrary, it often indicates how much they care. They are so afraid of losing you that they subconsciously try to protect themselves from that possibility by creating emotional distance. This fear is often rooted in past experiences. Many people carry emotional baggage from previous relationships, moments when they opened their hearts and ended up hurt or betrayed. These past wounds can cast long shadows over current relationships. Even when they know that their current partner is different, the fear of history repeating itself can be paralyzing. They might withdraw because they are afraid of becoming too dependent on you, too attached, only to face the pain of separation down the road. By ignoring you, they are trying to build a wall around their heart, a wall that in their minds might protect them from future pain. Ironically, this behavior can also stem from a desire to make the relationship stronger. They might believe that by creating distance, they are testing the strength of your connection. They want to see if your love can withstand periods of uncertainty. It's not a conscious game, rather, it's an unconscious way of seeking reassurance. They want to know that you will still be there, even if they pull back. This fear of loss makes them crave security, and sometimes they seek that security by creating situations that force the relationship to prove its resilience. It's a flawed strategy, but it's driven by a deep longing for stability and reassurance. Another dimension of this fear is the anxiety of not being enough. When someone loves you deeply, they want to be the best version of themselves for you. They might worry that they will fall short of your expectations, that they are not worthy of your love. This fear of inadequacy can be crippling. They might withdraw because they are afraid that if you see their flaws, you will leave. They think that by keeping a certain distance, they can prevent you from seeing the parts of themselves they are ashamed of. Their withdrawal is not about a lack of love, it's about a lack of self-confidence. They are so afraid of losing you that they try to hide their vulnerabilities, even if it means creating distance. This fear of loss can also create a sense of pressure. When you love someone deeply, their happiness becomes incredibly important to you. This can create an overwhelming sense of responsibility. They might feel that they have to constantly meet your needs, that any misstep could jeopardize the relationship. This pressure can be suffocating. In an attempt to relieve that pressure, they might pull back. They are not ignoring you because they don't care, they are doing so because they feel overwhelmed by the weight of their own expectations. They think that by creating distance, they can give themselves the space they need to breathe, to recalibrate, to find their footing again. It's also important to consider that fear of loss often triggers a fear of vulnerability. Love requires openness, and with that openness comes the risk of being hurt. When someone is deeply in love, they are exposing their heart in a way that makes them incredibly vulnerable. This vulnerability can be terrifying. They might think that by pulling back, they can protect themselves from the potential pain of that vulnerability. They are not trying to push you away, they are trying to protect themselves from the emotional risk that comes with loving so deeply. Their withdrawal is a defense mechanism, a way of trying to shield their heart from potential pain. Sometimes the fear of loss can also lead to overthinking. They might analyze every aspect of the relationship, looking for signs of trouble. This constant analysis can create a sense of paranoia. They might convince themselves that the relationship is doomed, even when there is no real evidence to support that belief. This self-sabotaging mindset can lead them to withdraw as a way of preemptively bracing for what they perceive as inevitable. They are not ignoring you because they have lost interest, they are doing so because they are trapped in a cycle of fear and overthinking. Understanding this dynamic requires empathy and patience. When someone who loves you deeply seems to ignore you, it's important to recognize that their behavior is often driven by their own fears and insecurities. It's not a reflection of your worth or of the strength of your relationship. They are wrestling with their own emotions, trying to navigate the complexities of love and vulnerability. The best way to support them is to create a safe space where they feel comfortable opening up. Let them know that you are there for them, that they don't have to face their fears alone. Love is not about perfection, it's about showing up for each other, even in moments of doubt and fear. When someone who loves you deeply seems to ignore you, their behavior can stem from a need to protect their emotional well-being. Love is one of the most powerful and intense emotions, capable of bringing immense joy but also vulnerability. For many, opening up and connecting on a profound level can feel overwhelming, and stepping back becomes a way to manage the intensity. This behavior isn't a rejection of you or a sign of diminished affection, rather, it's an attempt to maintain a sense of balance and emotional safety within themselves.